This presentation is going to talk you through the process of creating rectangular and circular patterns in AutoCAD. The specific tool used for this purpose is the Array tool. Here's an example of a rectangular pattern which started life as a simple rectangle here and then was patterned in terms of rows and columns, and then this circular pattern started life as this circle and this petal shape, which was patterned in a circular manner. Both rectangular and circular patterns are controlled using the same dialog box, which is brought up when you click on the Array button over here. When I click on it, up comes the Array dialog box. We'll look at rectangular patterns first of all. If I want to create a rectangular pattern of this small rectangle, in the Array dialog box I'm going to click on the Rectangular Array option as opposed to the Polar Array option that we'll look at in a moment. So Rectangular Array option selected brings me up the option to set the number of rows and the number of columns. Vertically we have columns, horizontally we have rows. The first thing to do would be to tell the software what is the geometry that's being patterned. In this case it's this one rectangle that's going to be patterned. So I'll click on this button here, the Select Objects button. The dialog box temporarily goes away and allows me to pick the thing that I want to pattern. Having selected it, I'll tell the software that I'm finished making selections by hitting return, and up comes the dialog box again automatically. I now then need to decide how many columns and how many rows. I'm going to see what 4 rows and 4 columns looks like at a spacing of 10mm for the row offset and 10mm for the column offset. Now I don't have to commit to these values because I'm taking a bit of a guess with these. What I'll do is I'll select Preview. The dialog box will disappear and I'll get a preview of what those values look like. I've clicked Preview. I don't particularly like what I'm getting. There's a couple of things wrong with it. I don't have enough columns and the rows are much too close together. So rather than accept or cancel, I'm going to select Modify and go back to the dialog box and decide that I think I want 6 rows and 6 columns. Now the column offset, the distance between each from left to right, seemed okay. So I'm going to keep the column offset at 10, but the row offset wasn't enough. They were too squashed together, so I'm going to try 30mm. I'll preview that. Everything seems fine with that, so I'll accept those values. That's rectangular pattern, basically taken care of. Let's do much the same thing for a circular pattern like this. I'll click on the Array button, and the first thing I spot is that the software doesn't talk about circular patterns, it talks about polar arrays. When you see the term polar array, it effectively means a circular pattern, so I'm going to select it. And the same next step as before is to tell the software which geometry is going to be patterned. So I'll pick the button that says Select Objects. The dialog box goes away and I'm going to pick this petal here. I'll just draw a box over it. Having selected it, I'll hit return and the dialog box comes back. Since this is a polar array, the important information now that the software is looking for is where is the centre of the circular pattern. You can see in a preview window here in the dialog box, I'll be able to take a look at an estimate of what the polar array is going to look like. To define the centre point, I could type in the x and y values if I knew the x and y value of the centre point of this array. Much more conveniently though, I'm going to click on this button, which is going to allow me to pick the centre of the array. So I'm just going to click here for the centre of the array. And now I need to make a decision as to how many of these petals I want and over how many degrees I want them. I think I'll go for 8 to see what it looks like. And again I can preview that. 8's okay, it's not exactly what I was after over here, so I'll go back and modify it. What I was really after was 12. Preview that again. I'm happy with that, so I'll accept it. That's rectangular and polar array.